So, welcome back to Favorite on Friday. For this second case for this week, we are going back to California. This case is another serial killer couple that is not as well known. However, the last name is very familiar. For context, I am not referring to Ted Bundy. And as far as I know, this woman has no actual relation to Ted Bundy, even though they have like the same last name. And spoiler, her last name is Bundy, but that's because she married a man whose last name is Bundy. So he may have relation to her. He may have relation to Ted, but she, as far as we know, has no direct relation to him. So for context, just to get that out of the way. And so with that being said, I'm gonna quit my rambling and let's go and get started. So Carol Mary Peters was born on August 26, 1942. It said that she was a pretty normal, happy child until she's 8 years old, and apparently one day her mother just decides to randomly not let her in the house and basically says, "You're not my child." And the only reason that Carol got back in the house was because her father had came home from work and said, "Let her back in the house." So she got back in the house, and Carol's mom basically wanted nothing to do with Carol because apparently she was becoming unattractive and didn't feel that Carol should be her daughter, which is kind of messed up because that's her mom, so that should be the person giving her support and stuff. Her mother does eventually die when she's 11 or 12. It's said for a heart attack. So then the father has already agreed with the death of the mother. The father says, "Y'all gotta take over all responsibilities that your mama had." So the cooking, cleaning, stuff that mothers do around the house. Which, I mean, that's, if they're old enough, that's pretty much normal. However, unfortunately, he would also make them take over the sexual parts too. Because, yeah. And so, of course, Carol apparently had a younger sister, and they would play a game, and whoever would lose, it said rock, paper, scissors or some shit. And whoever would lose a game, that would be the person that would have to go pleasure their dad at that time. So he does wind up getting remarried, but it said that, he got remarried. The abuse, the sexual abuse he was doing to his daughters didn't stop, even though some sources were saying that it did. It got to one point to where her father had apparently killed the family cat and apparently had snapped and was trying to kill the whole family, but luckily the new wife got the gun away from him before he could proceed to kill the whole family. And so, of course, the new wife, she obviously leaves, and of course she files for divorce. Now, it said that Carol was put out and put into foster care. At 17, she would marry a man who's 56, so he's more than triple her age, but apparently this is said to get away from her father. And that this 56-year-old man, unfortunately, wanted to prostitute her. Then, of course, she would remarry another man who apparently was a science fiction writer and also wrote material for porn. And so in 1962, her father had actually committed suicide by hanging. So that's the last we hear of the father. So while she's remarried to the second man, he's paying for her nursing school, and she's cheating on him. And she actually still graduates as valedictorian, so she was actually at least somewhat smart. So then, of course, she is a nurse while all this is going on. So then, of course, they eventually split. She gets married for the third time to a Grant Bundy, which is where she's known as Carol Bundy to the media. And they have 2 sons together. So now she's the mother of 2. Grant was actually said to have been abusive. And, of course, Carol takes her and her sons over to a shelter. And then, of course, they move into an apartment, which was owned by 45-year-old Jack Murray, who apparently was Australian, but he came over to the United States basically to become famous, get that Hollywood dream. So, of course, his legal name apparently was John Robert Murray, but, of course, nickname for John was Jack, at least back then. So, I'm referring to him as Jack because that's what makes it easier for me. So, I'm not overthinking we're talking about 2 different people. So, if I'm referring to him as Jack, that was his nickname. That's what he preferred to be called by. And it just makes it easier for me, okay? Because in my mind, he's memorized as Jack. So Jack, of course, he's married, and despite being married, he is singing at a bar occasionally, which, nothing wrong with that. He's trying to build his career. However, unfortunately, he is having multiple affairs with, a bunch of women. The wife is aware of this. She doesn't like it, but, at least he's still with me. And then Carol comes into the picture, and the wife was like, well, Carol is not attractive. Basically said that Carol was ugly, and there's no way that Jack would sleep with somebody that looks like that. So I ain't got to worry about, Jack trying to sleep with Carol. Well, Carol must have had something, or Jack must have been pretty desperate, because they do wind up sleeping together, and they're doing this on a regular occasion. And apparently Carol starts catching feelings for Jack. So then she pays the wife $1,500 to leave Jack. And so then the wife gets Jack to evict Carol. So then, of course, she's devastated, and she's following him around bars that he would often sing at, until at one of these bars she met Daniel Douglas Clark in 1980. We're going to refer to him as Doug because that was his name. That, again, in the media, that's why I memorized him as. So he's Daniel Douglas Clark, but he went by Doug, okay? So, Doug was born in 1948. Doug and his family would often move around because his father apparently was like an intelligence officer. So that requires like a lot of like moving around and shit. He attended the Culver Military Academy and graduated in 1967 before going on to the Air Force. He apparently had wrote an explicit letter to a teacher telling him like the sexual things that he wanted to do to her, and obviously, of course, those feelings weren't like reciprocated because, like I said, like nothing really happened, and he winds up getting kicked out of the Air Force shortly after that happened. So then he started working as a mechanic, then a steam work operator, and when he's 24, he marries a woman named Beverly, and he starts working at a soap factory. It said that he would wear his wife's underwear just like he did with his mom growing up, and nothing really was said about that like after that. But like I just thought that was pretty interesting that he was wearing his mom's underwear and what that could have possibly have meant. So of course, as you can imagine, the story ain't nobody faithful. Everybody cheating. Except the one dude that paid for Carol's nursing career. He was a pretty good dude. Doug is cheating on his wife. He's going to bars, had multiple affairs with women, is declaring himself the king of the one-night stand, and apparently even recorded, like audio recorded, segments of him having sex with women that he had brought back to his room in college, and apparently would show it to his friends. So then apparently one of these nights while he's at a bar in 1980, this is where he meets Carol. So now we're caught up on both the backstories, and now they have officially met. So it is said that he actually went home with Carol like that night, and he never left. So he pretty much just like was there, and then he just like pretty much moved in right away, which obviously, is a huge red flag. It is said that there was an 11-year-old neighbor that Carol had, and unfortunately the two of them were taking advantage of this 11-year-old, and they were taking pictures of it. Like, Doug was making the girl give him oral sex, amongst other things, but didn't go into details about what exactly she went through. And apparently she's only identified as Shannon, which obviously you can't give her, like, actual name out unless she decides to close. Unless she publicly comes out herself and says, hey, I was that girl that this happened to, she probably ain't gonna do it, considering all the horrors these two did. So he winds up getting fired. Doug winds up getting fired from his job for threatening his coworkers. Obviously, you can't have that. And then apparently he tried to set fire to his car to basically, like, insurance fraud, to get money from insurance for a fire that he intentionally set. And so Doug would even tell Carol all his sexual fantasies and say, look, if you really love me, you would kill for me. So then Carol gets, it says like she got like 2 of them. So like 2.25 automatic Ravens under her name. So then on one night, it said that he picked up a 16-year-old Cynthia Chandler and 15-year-old Gina Morondo. And apparently they were stepsisters. Didn't specify how they were stepsisters. It's just they were stepsisters. And so Cynthia Lee Chandler was born on February 25th, 1964. And then Gina was born on May 4th, 1965. And so the two were actually said to have been runaways. And of course, they, at the time this happened, they obviously had run away from home again. Doesn't make what happened right to them, obviously. So just for that clarification. And apparently they both get in the car. Gina's in the back seat. Cynthia apparently is giving Doug oral sex. So he's in the driver's seat. She's in the passenger seat. Gina's in the back. And she tells Gina to like look away. He shoots Gina in the head while she's obviously pointing away. And then Cynthia, her head is like still like down by his lap. So then he shoots her, and miraculously they're both still alive. So he takes both of them back to the apartment where he has his way with them, and then they eventually of course die. So then on June 12th, their bodies are unfortunately found on the freeway. 2 days later, so June 14th, Carol calls from a payphone, because obviously can't use your actual phone, and she calls police to confess that her boyfriend, which is Doug, had committed the murders, but she did not mention Doug by name. She just said her boyfriend, and was keeping herself anonymous too. And she was giving details that apparently weren't publicly available, and she was trying to see like, he told me this, is this true? And the police were like, yeah. And so she hung up before she could give the police like who she was or even who Doug was. And then Doug, of course, would confide in Carol that, look, I might have to kill you too because you know too much. And it said this is before they start like joining like together and killing people together. There will be another night where Doug goes and he picks up 2 sex workers who were friends, and they were both from Arkansas, by the name of Karen Jones and Exie Wilson. So then Karen Lee Jones was born on February 23rd, 1956, and then Exie LaFay Wilson was born on August 17th, 1959. So apparently he picked them up separately. So he goes and gets Exie by herself. He kills her. He decapitates her head. Her head is in the back seat of this car. And then he goes and picks up Karen. Because like I said, Karen and Exie are friends. He could identify Doug, and he don't need no witnesses. So we got to kill Karen just because she's a witness to a kidnapping, now murder. Because Exie, of course, is deceased. But of course, poor Karen, she does not know that. So she gets in the front, not knowing that Exy's decapitated head is literally like right behind her. So then of course Karen, she's killed too, as you can imagine. So then they go home and take Exy's head, they put it in the freezer. Since they decapitate her, you gotta keep it, I guess they thought it was gonna keep it fresh. So they put it in the freezer, and Carol apparently put makeup on Exy every single morning, and Doug would go basically jack off with Exy's head. So on June 23rd, they find Karen shot to death in a gutter. 3 hours later, so still the same day, Exy's body is found in a dumpster of basically like behind a restaurant, and her body is like identified only because like fingerprints, because she's been arrested in the past. So they pull fingerprints from like people who've been arrested in the past and shit. So that's how they identified Exy. So on the 28th, a man would apparently find a box, and he opened it, I guess thinking that there was going to be something good inside of it. Of course, unfortunately, it was Exy's head inside of it, and there was a pink shirt covering her head. And apparently it said Daddy's Girl on it, and of course her head was frozen, because like I said, they were keeping her in the freezer. So then on June 30th, 17-year-old Marnette Comer's body was found in the San Fernando Valley. She was born on May 21st, 1963. So crazy thing is, she was actually said to last been seen alive with the shirt that was covering Exy's head. And she was, okay, so they gave an estimated like time of death, and it was about 3 weeks ago. So they believe that Marnette was actually the first known victim, if not the first ever victim of Doug and Carol. So I guess at this point, Carol was starting to have guilt about the murders, or she's scared about getting caught, maybe both, who knows. She decides she's going to attempt suicide by injecting insulin, taking a bunch of pills. She calls into work. Remember, like I said, she's a nurse, so she has access to this stuff. She calls into work. She tells people, I'm going to kill myself. Basically, yeah. And so apparently it's actually said that she had told people at work about the murders that she had committed. So of course they call police. She leaves it, I want to call it, she left like a voicemail for Doug for him to come get her. But of course he never did. Don't know if he heard it. I want to believe he didn't actually care. It was like, just let her go down. That way I don't get in trouble. There's one less witness to what we've been doing anyway, so whatever. And so, of course, like I said, Carol does survive. So then after getting out, after confessing to coworkers and attempting to, like, kill herself, she was let out pretty soon, which is kind of concerning. And then she went to go meet up with Jack. So, fast forward to August 9th, police find a van that had an odor that had been there for, like, a couple days. Keep in mind, it's August, and it is California, so you know it's hot. And apparently there was a heat wave, so that means it was extra hot. So they open up the van, and they find Jack Murray's decapitated body in the van. He'd been stabbed 9 times and apparently had been shot. Oh, and also, apparently his body had been there for at least 5 days, and so his body was swung from the August California heat. And of course, they go to witnesses to the bars that Jack was, like, singing at, and they were saying that he was last seen alive with Carol, and then apparently it seemed like she was either her ex, which I guess they were fooled around, so they were partially right, or that it seemed that he kind of scammed her out of money, which apparently he did, and he had lied and told him that his wife, the wife that Carol was trying to get rid of, that the wife had cancer. She never had cancer. He was doing this like for himself, and she probably just wanted the money back. So of course, Carol, knowing that she's the last person to have been publicly seen with somebody whose body's just been found decapitated, that obviously looks suspicious. She goes down to the station for questioning. Doug says, I'll go with you. Of course, they're separated, so they both could have their versions, so their versions don't sound the same. So they don't have time to, like, rehearse and shit. So then Carol says, I was with Doug the whole night that Jack died. And then, of course, Doug basically says, yeah, that's what happened. So then due to, like, lack of evidence and Carol's alibi, because we also know Carol was the one who killed Jack. So then Doug comes back to the station, and he later says that, like, there was actually a couple hours where Carol disappeared, and I don't know where she's at. So she probably could have used those hours to kill Jack, and then try to use me as an alibi. Just thought y'all should know. And then, of course, Carol, she does finally wind up admitting to killing Jack. So then, of course, Carol, to, like, help pin evidence against Doug, because she was like, look, if I'm going down, you going down too, ho. She gives them all the clothes that they stole from the victims, so the victims that they killed, and he was like, yeah, these are the clothes of the victims, this victim, that victim, da-da-da. And then she also gave the pictures that Carol apparently took with Doug of that 11-year-old that I mentioned earlier. So, of course, now that we got photographic evidence that you over here, like, violating kids and stuff, Doug is at least charged with sexual assault of a child, so we can't get you on these murder charges. We're going to get you on the sexual assault. So they're going to try to get Doug on something, which, understandably. So then Carol says, there's actually another person who we killed that y'all ain't, like, found yet. Like, y'all haven't discovered their body yet. So, you know, that's a shock, because at least, like, I thought that was everybody. And then Doug, of course, would come out and say that Jack and Carol were the actual serial killer couple. He's being framed, and apparently he never changed that story. He's kept that story up until, like, I think this year or last year. So police find out about a storage that Doug has. So obviously they're gonna go look at that shit, and they find bloody boot prints, which is the same boot prints that he was wearing. So that proves at least he's involved in that murder, whichever murder that may have been. So then they also find blood and bullet holes in the car. So that's another thing that ties Doug to at least a murder. And apparently they found the guns that they were used in the murder at Doug's job. And of course they're registered under Carol's name, so that way like Doug can get blamed, but there's enough evidence to like put him in jail. And so on August 26th, a worker was inspecting a water tower when he found a body. And apparently, like I said, I give the victims' names, obviously, because that's, this woman sadly has not been identified. So it's not that I'm not giving her name, it's just she literally has not been identified to this day, but she's registered as like Jane Doe number 18. And then of course you can imagine, Doug is blaming Carol for literally everything. He is sentenced to death on January 29th, 1983. Carol says, yeah, that, the Jane Doe that you found over in the water tower, we didn't kill her. We actually killed another Jane Doe that y'all. Apparently, like, another Jane Doe been found in March of 1983, and Carol was like, yeah, we did that murder. We didn't do the Jane Doe y'all found in the water tower. So even though, like, Carol herself even says, we didn't kill that Jane Doe, and they've been honest about pretty much literally everything else, it is still believed that Jane Doe number 18 was a victim of Doug and Carol. But of course, we never know, and we don't know the identities of either one of these women. So I hope they are at least one day identified. And so on May 2nd, 1983, so I guess Carol took a plea deal. So instead of getting the death penalty, she got 52 years in prison. Carol would die of heart failure in 2003. And so then Doug, of course, died actually this year, like 2 months ago, on October 11th, 2023 at 75 from apparently natural causes. So like I said, yeah, that is the Sunset Strip killers. I guess the other serial killer, Bundy. Like I said, the lesser known Bundy, no relation. Definitely know if you have any thoughts down below. This one is a longer case, but like I said, it should be talked about considering how crazy it is. As far as I know, they never actually found Jack's head, or I feel like they would have mentioned that because remember I said they found Xy's head and they mentioned it. Yeah, I feel like they would have mentioned had they found Jack's head. So yeah, if anybody knows, did they find Jack's head? Definitely let me know. If you know anybody that was involved in this case, would be the killers or the victims, definitely let me know also, because that's definitely interesting. Like if you went to school with them, if you dated them, etc., or you're related to them, whatever. If anybody knows where the sons are at, I mean, if they don't want to be associated with Carol, I wouldn't blame them. They probably outliving their life right now. And so knowing that their mom is all that serial killer, which is, I imagine that's probably a pretty load to like carry. So that's why I don't ask like where the son's at, but if they want to disclose like, hey, this is where we're at, we're still alive, we're doing XYZ, then that's their business, because you know they grown. And so yeah, if anybody has any more cases you want me to cover, definitely let me know. I'm here for you guys 3 times every Friday, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
So if I play dead, will you regret everything that you did, that you said? I don't think you understand what you're doing, and my heart's black and blue from the bruising. I feel like when I'm with you I'm losing. I feel like you think that this amusing, sitting there gaslighting and confusing. Was it me? Is it me? Am I deluded? I'm the one who's always sorry, the conclusion. Even though I offer all of the solutions, I wish you loved me like I love you, it's stupid. When I'm alone with you I never feel lucid. I wish I wasn't struck by Cupid. I wish when I first saw you I knew this. When I'm with you I feel so useless, I feel diluted, my heart's been wounded. Silhouettes of you are like a taunt, never really know just what you want.